This is Susana Magenheimer, Random Artist 222, and I'm part of Shawn Petite's creative design team. And my project for this session is a take on watercolor. I showed this on Shawn Petite's Facebook group, and it got a lot of good responses, so I thought it'd be the perfect project to show how I accomplished it. Please note, I do have an extended director's cut version on my own YouTube channel for those of you who want a slower and more detailed video. It would be Random Artist 222, all one word. As you see here, these are the stencils that I used. I used the Cotton Stems, Flourish, Flower Silhouette 4, Garden 2, Flower Gang 5, and this lovely one here, Flower Silhouette 1. And I put these together in a way that it would give me the effect of a floral bouquet. And something that, like I said, crosses over from watercolor to those old masters oil paintings. Not that I'm anywhere near good as that, but just that effect inspired me. You're going to need the stencils, and you're going to need some sprays. And I'm using most of the Lindy's Stamp Gang sprays this time. But any spray, anything you like works. So don't feel like you have to use these colors to make the effect happen. I'm using some ink pads to add some dimension later on, and also some dimensional glues. So let me clear this up, and then I'll be right back to show you what we're going to create. Okay, so here's the inspiration piece, and it's not the original because I gave my mom for Christmas the original. She adores poinsettias, and I have to say that Shawn's probably got some of the prettiest poinsettia stencils out there, and they can be manipulated in many ways. This print that I did is pretty accurate to what I gave my mom. You can see here the dimensional, let me just put this down. See that effect, that dimensional gold that I put in the center? That's actually watercolor that I put around it to give it some more dimension. And what I'm trying to show here in this project is how I created the speckling effect, stippling, whatever you want to call it, a take on pointillism. I like the fact that if you look here in the light, none of the glare is going to get, you see how the way I sprayed it created these speckles, the pointillism effect, and kind of disappears into the background. And I love that effect. And it was one of those, what I call happy accidents. And then it's a matter from there, layering how much you want to do. Now this, I would call my elegant version. It's the way it is. I added a little bit of highlights throughout the piece with pastels and other inks and things that I'll show you as well. But you could also have taken this and, created your own outlines, doodles, whatever you want to take it to a different level. So it's a very unique project in the sense that you can go from something super elegant to something very mixed media, whimsical kind of. So let me show you how I do this. So here's some of the initial things, is watercolor paper. I like the watercolor paper because of the way the sprays diffuse on them. You could do this on hard paper as well, non-watercolor paper, I should say. But like I said, I like the effect of this. And this is like BEE, watercolor paper. They make a really nice weighted watercolor cold press, and it's also reasonably priced, especially if you're trying techniques out and you haven't gotten it quite down. You want something that you can play on, that you're not going to spend a lot of money on and then go up the food chain, so to speak, on the quality. I'm going to demonstrate with a couple of stencils and then go into the full bouquet, but I want you to not be bored watching me spray a bunch of things. But this is what I sprayed first, was her Hydrangea Effect stencil. And as you can see, I spray very hard here. This is where I'm aiming, and the splatter hits this way. So that's how I'm creating this effect. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to use this right here. Since I already have this as my centerpiece, I'm going to show you how I do this. Now, it's very important when you're working with sprays to have some kind of splatter box. You don't need anything super fancy. Like this is one of the ones that are on the market that I just did to try out. My problem with it, it's very narrow. So, you know, I go and get a box, or, you know, when I get something from a store that I purchase from, I just take that box and I crop it down to where what I need and what I want. For the purposes of this demo, I'm going to use this box. You also need, it's very handy to have some of these index cards, just throwaway index cards as I call them, and just a little bit of tape. And what I do with my tape, so you know, is if I put it, like, sometimes when you put tape on something, fresh tape on a piece of paper and then pull it back, you might rip. So what I do is I put it on my clothes and I just pull it back until I get a nice, I still get stick, but I'm not gonna, you know, adhere my stencil to it. So we have the floral piece that I sprayed, and it's the exact same thing as I'm going to show you with the leaf, so there's nothing different here. I just wanted to start something so that you could see how it looks as the way it's intended to look. So now I'm going to bring this down, and as you can see, hopefully you can see, this flower is underneath, right? And I don't want to necessarily cover it up. And the beauty of this process, and let me grab one of my stent doubles here. The beauty of this process is that you can have these stencils overlapping, because when you go back and you're going to add more dimension with inks or pastels or whatever you're going to use, those things tend to disappear into the background. So I'm not freaked out if, you know, some splatter ends up here or there. I know I can work the shading, or I can work the shading into a way that it's going to be totally distracting and you won't even know that it's there. So that's what I also love about this process. It's really no way to screw it up. Okay, so I know though that this flower's here and I really don't want to cover up the whole flower. So I'm going to take my tape, oops, one of my famous whoops, and something really easy to do is just put like a heavy tube of paint. And now you have to be very cognizant. You have a leaf here, right? And you don't want that one to get captured with the spray. And you have these little guys, and you don't want that captured in the spray. And then you have this side piece that you don't want that captured in the spray. Remember, you have a flower under here that you don't want the whole thing covered. So you're going to put a piece of paper right here. And also, I should probably add right now, when you use sprays, it's messy. And I have found probably the best product for getting most of it off my hands, the Ranger Scrubby. And that is just, it looks like styrofoam actually, and you just wipe it underwater and it pretty much takes most of it off. So I'm not afraid to get my hands all inky and messy. Now you can see here, there's a little bit of the flower that's still there. I don't care, because that's going to be something that I can hide because I'm going to highlight my leaves eventually. So now here comes the process. I'm going to take my spray, and instead of spraying straight down, which you don't want, what I'm going to do is I'm spraying it from the side, that I'm going sideways. Let me see if I can do this. See that? I'm actually sideways. So I'm blasting it from here this way. Okay, and I'm looking over it just to make sure, and the greens hit everywhere, and just a little bit of green on the top, which is exactly what I want. So I'm going to come in here, just dab it down. Okay. And I love her stencils because so far as I've been doing this process, I haven't had it seep too much underneath the stencil, which is great. But again, not a big deal because this is a very abstract process. So let me take this out and show you what I did. So you see here, the strongest part of the spray blast was here, and it's a little bit random, but for the most part it's at the base. And then I got the speckle effect up here and into even this lightest piece here. So that's what you're after. Again, let me show you down here. That was the hardest hitting point of the spray as it goes this way. And I end up with that lighter spray effect, that little speckly goodness. Okay? All right, so now let me show you the next part. We don't need, once you spray all your flowers and everything, you don't need that box anymore. She has what I call it, what she calls a flourish stencil. And this is when, well, once you have all your flowers put out the way you want, and let me show you one of my stent doubles to show you exactly what I mean. Well, this was a stump double, sorry. So in this case, I have a leaf here, I have the centerpiece here, and I'm just trying out different doodles and things over here. But basically, like I said, you're setting up your elements. And what I wanted to do, and I'll just do it on this one, is I wanted to create some kind of ethereal sticks kind of thing in the piece. So I'm grabbing coffee archival ink, which is the best inks to use because they do not run. And they play very nice with all mediums. So they're my go-to. But let's say here, okay, I have this space now right here. And instead of putting a leaf or another flower, what I'm going to do is I'm going to put this here. Okay. So I'm just going to very lightly use a light hand because, you know, it depends on what you want. Okay, and you want to see where it's going to hit underneath. Okay, so this is a very light touch. I'm going to do it like this so you can see. Okay, and to me that looks really cool. It's in the background. It's a nice little focal piece. It doesn't get too busy with the overall thing that I want to do. Over here I have a little spot, so I'm going to bring over anything that kind of in this stencil, the flourish stencil, that looks like tendrils, like vines, like sticks. And I have this one here that looks like a tendril. And again, I'm going over the blue flower, but it doesn't matter because it's going to get highlighted with different things. Parts of this are going to disappear in the way you highlight the pieces below it. And again, just use a very light hand. I went a little heavy there, but let's make this one heavier just so you can see the difference. Okay, so you can see that this is a very much more heavier take on this. And again, because I know I'm going to come back with red ink in here to highlight, or sorry, green ink, solid dark green ink to highlight this, I'm not too worried about that. And as a matter of fact, let me show you that now. Okay, so we had just positioned this vine, like I said, out of the flourishes so that it gives that effect. And I'm going to bring back one of my stencils because I want to show you how you make that disappear now, so you don't have to worry when you're doing this technique. All right, so now I'm going to stick this over here. This is one I've been using, so it needs a little more stickum. All right, so now I'm going to take the Appletini from, oops, sorry about that, W+9. And what I like to do is, I don't have 3 hands, so I'm going to, well, I don't need, okay. This time I'm going to use a sponge dauber because I know I want to do a lot more stenciling. So here's that brown piece. And what I'm going to do now is, I always like going up towards the direction of, so I'm not covering the speckles. Okay, so I'm going to go like that. And I want the ones way below to be super dark green, so I'm doing that on purpose. Obviously there's no red in, but there's reflection, so I'm leaving a little bit of red in that bottom piece. Okay, so before I pull this off and show you how that disappeared, I'm going to grab my red, and now I'm going to bring this in. I can show you here. I covered that up, so now I have my green base of this hydrangea. And then that vine that I created that effect on, it pretty much disappears here, right? Because the green is now covering that. And it pushes this flower into the background. So it's just a matter of how you play and what you want to do with it. That creates your dimension. I do have a stent double of one where I went and highlighted a lot of these flowers. that I'll show you right now so you can see how effective this technique is. See, here's the browns, the twigs effects. You don't even see them going into, you know, like here, there was some blue overlap in the blue, delphiniums, and you can't even see it because I went and added a little bit more darker ink in here, but I'm going to try to get in close. Okay, I still got the effect of the speckles. I don't want to lose that. That's the whole point of this technique. And if I wanted to, I could go back and make these leaves even darker if I want them to look like they're in the foreground or in the background. But I was really happy with the way this one came out, so this is the one that I'm going to take to the next step. Okay, so the final part of this is I'm going to show you how the watercolor effect happens. Now, I showed you my stent double here where I've already added all the highlights to it, the flowers themselves. This is just the first step in the highlighting of them. The second part is creating depth in them. And what I like to do is I use some Payne's Gray from Dr. P.H. Martin's Fine Art Watercolor. And I'm going to just put a little bit of water here. That's all you need. See, that's a teeny tiny drop. Okay, so I want to add some depth to this, and I'm going to use this one because I'm still working on the other one, and I'm going to add some other finishes on that. So the beautiful thing about watercolor is it follows the water. Okay, so my water's a little dirty, but that's all right. You'll actually see it better. So if you imagine that's clear water and you drop that in, your watercolor is going to start moving in it, and it's not going to go beyond where the water is. If you find that your color is too heavy and you're not happy with it, you tap it and it'll pull most of it off. So now I'm dropping in the watercolor. Oops. And it's going to follow those paths of the water that I just laid out. See how that's going just along. And it's a little dark, so I'm going to bring that out a little bit. And this is just a matter of taste, how much you want to put in and how much you don't. In my original art piece, I just wanted enough in the centers to create that kind of a depth to it, the shadows that would be way deep in the background. I didn't put it all throughout the petals. So again, those are choices you make as you create your pieces. And okay, so what I'm going to do off camera is what you see here with the watercolor, but I'm also going to do what you see here. And this is what I call taking it from that elegant look to more of a mixed media vibe to it. And let me take this out before I put my whole sleeve in it. Okay, so what you see here, let me just zoom in there, is I went ahead and just started doodling, which is I took a black micron pen and just started outlining the petals. I started using some of the gel pens and adding some texture inside the petals. On this one, I just went ahead and just outlined, you know, one side of the petals to give it a kind of like a shadow effect. So it can be whatever you want. At the very end of this whole thing, you're going to sit here and go, well, what are you going to do with all this white spot, all this white background? And personally, some of it I'm very happy with. But you can do this. If you want a little bit more, if you don't want to add like a deeper purple in there or a lighter purple watercolor or whatever you're using, pastel. You can take, in this case, this is Glimmer Mist from Tattered Angels, vintage paper. And it's a very, very soft beige. And I don't have my box, so bear with me here. But what I would do at the very end when everything's done is just, well, one, I always test spray off to the side just to make sure it's coming out powdery. Okay, and I take a dry paper towel. And you can see now I've actually added background to my piece so that it's not a stark beige or whatever you want to call this, off-shell, eggshell kind of background. So that's one way to do that, to add even more dimension to the whole piece. And when I come back, you'll see the final product with all this applied to it. So that's what I've got for you. Remember to please subscribe, comment. If you found this inspiring, I really appreciate the subscriptions, and have a great day.